Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you guys with the most up-to-date political, economic and geostrategic analysis on the world's #2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Okay, happy Saturday everybody. I hope you're enjoying your weekend. This week has been a very big week in terms of China news. As such, I've decided that I will be doing a special episode tomorrow on Sunday because there is simply too much to cover this week and we need to make sure we're on top of it before we move into next week. So there will be an episode on Sunday tomorrow, and next week should have regular episodes as well. Before we move into the main stories for today, also an update on Taiwan's Tsai Ing-wen's US trip. We learned today that Tsai has scaled back her US itinerary and will no longer give a speech at the Reagan Library. Yesterday we discussed how the California leg of her trip could end up being the most provocative from Beijing's perspective. US-based Bloomberg writes that after consultations among lawmaker McCarthy's staff, the administration and the Taiwanese government, quote, Tsai's itinerary in the US has been scaled back and now unlikely to include a speech at the Reagan Library, end quote. We did a deep dive into Tsai's sensitive US trip and its implications in yesterday's video. Okay, let's begin with the main stories, and we start today's video with ideology and politics, and then we will move on to economic developments. This is very dry, but important to cover. On Thursday, the party's powerful Politburo Central Committee launched a, quote, party-wide thematic education campaign starting from April to study and implement Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era, end quote. According to an official readout, the campaign will focus on leading officials at and above the county and director level to use the party's new theories, quote, to achieve unity in thought and build a modern socialist country in all respects and advance the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation on all fronts, end quote. The readout also uses the term forging the soul 3 times. Then, on Friday, yesterday, the Politburo held a study session on the so-called education campaign. According to a state-run Xinhua article on the meeting, quote, Xi described the thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era as a holistic and scientific system that includes various aspects such as promoting reform, development and stability, handling domestic affairs, foreign affairs and national defense, and governing the party, the country and the military, end quote. Xi also underscored a 6-point approach that must be followed. 1. Putting the people first. 2. Maintaining self-confidence and self-reliance. 3. Upholding fundamental principles and breaking new ground. 4. Adopting a problem-oriented approach. 5. Applying systems thinking. And 6. Maintaining a global vision. Meanwhile, also on Friday, the State Council released an amended version of government working rules. The general principles of the new set of rules have stripped away the previous guiding principles, replacing them with Xi Jinping thought. The new rules also require the State Council to, quote, report and seek instructions from the party regarding major decisions in a timely manner, end quote, and has tightened significantly what government documents can be published. The party, it seems, continues to swallow the state, and Xi Jinping thought continues to swallow the party. And Chinese commentators are making no secret of what the party is preparing for. Quote, the circumstances are different now. As we are facing a difficult struggle with the US, we will have to re-examine what government documents can be released. External forces might use some documents to create divisions among the Chinese people. I think that is why they decided to tighten the control, end quote. Next up, a corporate bloodbath. Hey guys, hope you're having a great weekend. If you're enjoying today's episode of China Update, don't forget to hit the like button. Liking and subscribing and sharing is a huge help. In fact, sharing is one of the best ways to help the channel grow because the algorithm doesn't seem to be too fond of these types of episodes. And for anyone who can go the extra mile and be part of the community that keeps the channel sustainable, I rely primarily on subscriber support, not corporate sponsorship. Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. Thank you so much everybody for the ongoing support. Now we continue from yesterday's video with our examination of savaged business balance sheets from key players across different sectors. poor profits performances and what it means for investor confidence and the 2023 outlook is a key theme we have been following this week. The next company we're going to look at is embattled technology company Huawei. According to a new company filing, the Chinese telecommunications giant has posted its lowest profit margin in its history for 2022, achieving a very narrow revenue gain and seeing reported net profits of $5.18 billion for 2022, a painful 67% decline from 2021. Huawei's consumer business, which houses its smartphone unit, shrank 12% in 2022. Huawei is in its third year of US sanctions, which in part means it is unable to use the Android system or US-made 5G chips. The sanctions have forced the company to greatly diversify its business into new sectors in the domestic market. Chief Financial Officer Meng Wanzhou, who was detained in Canada for extradition to the US and later released, likely in exchange for the release of 2 Canadians detained in China on alleged espionage charges, expressed this week that the profit decline was due to higher research spending. However, commentators believe the plunge is far more acute to be due to this alone. And indeed, the company chairman admitted that, quote, a challenging external environment, end quote, was a major factor in Huawei's 2022 performance. Research spending is no doubt high, though. Huawei is developing its own semiconductors to get around US sanctions. The firm has also been accused of IP theft. Huawei recently announced that it has developed its own chip design software for 14-nanometer chips. Now, for the next industry, it should come as no surprise that China's airlines sector has been decimated over the last 3 years of zero-COVID policy. As we have seen in previous videos, if not for strong state support, many of the major players could not have survived. We have now learned that 2022 was an especially painful year for corporate profits in the sector. According to its earnings report, released on Thursday this week, total losses at China's so-called Big Three state-owned airlines in 2022 skyrocketed to over $15.8 billion. And of course, this was driven by the tight zero-COVID restrictions, which we followed closely last year. However, the huge losses were also in part due to high oil prices and a weaker yuan, which dropped to 8% against the dollar last year. Chinese financial media outlet Caixin has produced a useful graphic here with accompanying commentary. Net losses at Beijing-based Air China widened 132% from the previous year to 38.6 billion yuan in 2022, quote, making the national flag carrier the worst performer of the three, end quote. Shanghai-based China Eastern Airlines saw a drop of 37.4 billion yuan for 2022, widening 206% year-on-year, and Guangzhou-based China Southern Airlines saw 32.7 billion yuan in losses, 170% more year-on-year. As we can see, the 3 state-owned airlines are each based in the 3 major economic clusters in the country, that is the Beijing-Tianjin area of the north, the Yangtze River Delta around Shanghai, and the Pearl River Delta around Guangzhou, also known as Canton in English. One commentator described the horrible airline performance in 2022 as a bloodbath. Quote, the impact of the pandemic in 2022 on the country's civil aviation industry was worse than expected. End quote. As we've seen over the last 2 days, businesses across several industries and policymakers alike will very much be hoping for a robust recovery in 2023 in order to repair deeply wounded corporate balance sheets. Whether this happens or not, we will have to see. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Have a great Saturday, everybody, a great weekend, and I will see you all tomorrow.